believe it or not, my entire reasoning for joining DeviantArt in the first place was not because I was a fan of impressive artwork other people flood the site with on a daily basis, but rather because I was interested in... what else? This guy again. I want to read more stories about these two, but Fanfiction.net didn't seem to have much else to offer outside Shadow Realm material that my grandparents would rightfully scream over if they read. Even as someone of age to read said material nowadays, I still think it's really icky, and I just want something more tame and cute like the original cartoons. And to me, finding Pepe Le Pew fans on DeviantArt. I joined the site promptly, was very shy, and asked the people I had found about their love for the characters. Despite one of them roleplaying as Pepe Le Pew 24/7, while significant other roleplay as a cat for him, she was honest enough to explain and give me some tips for writing and drawing art. Yes, I was actually interested in drawing art back then, but outside of a very crappy pics I drew while constantly looking at a reference sheet, nothing came from it. No, instead what came from my time on DeviantArt was none other than the ability to write more stories. But for the first 5 months I was on, I did little more on DeviantArt outside write some very basic short stories, favorite some artwork, and plug my fanfiction page a lot, because I was mostly focused on Nintendo Life forums for everything else, having joined those recently as well. Therefore, those forums went up in flames due to a dictator-like moderator. However, in the summer of 2012, I would encounter several good and bad things that would change my writing career as I knew it forever, and it introduced me to the shadow realms of DeviantArt. First, before we get into what you've all been waiting to hear from me to confess, let's talk about the biggest project I ever did on the website. In July of 2012, I had been reading some more well-made stories from an amazing friend of mine, a person who was named Josiah in real life, but on DeviantArt he was known as Residential Toontown. No relation to that awful MMO. He was also a fan of the two Pepe Le Pew fans who got me interested in joining DeviantArt in the first place, so me and him in the comment section of some random Looney Tunes thing I forgot about, we got along really well. He was writing some stories at the time, so I decided to check them out. Now those stories were the exact ones I wanted to find all along. Stories of the two characters I was really obsessed with, along with some other stories of classic characters like Bugs, Daffy, written the same comedic style of the classic male brain cartoons. They weren't perfect by any means, but they were certainly a lot better well written than mine. Needless to say, we knew each other for a good several months at a time, and I was feeling motivated to write a new fanfiction, but one that would surpass my prior efforts on Fanfiction.net by being exclusive to DeviantArt. With a supporting friend giving me advice, as you can see from this old message, I eventually managed to work out my biggest story to date, and even now, it's still the biggest story I've currently written. Introducing the Tale of Ancient Happiness Vanished. Yes, the title is utterly stupid, though some may argue in this day and age that the feeling of happiness has been fading due to recent world events. The title was meant to not make sense at all to the actual plot. Instead, it's a side effect of a major obsession I was dealing with at the time, one I decided to pay a bit of tribute and parody to in my story. Ease. Yes, I'll be making an actual Eternal Memories episode on those games at a later date, but those who know me well know that I absolutely love this series, and 2012 was the year I first got into it. Therefore, I decided for some idiotic reason to combine Looney Tunes action with parodies of the Ease franchise. I'm not kidding, unless it's a worse idea than the Shark Zone crossover. Still, somehow I was committed to getting the story done, and eventually I made it into an epic 50-chapter tale. Since I never really got any art made of it and used my friend's characters for most of the story before he vanished off the face of the internet, you'll just have to deal with looking at my face, recalling the story as I give you all a summary of the entire thing from my script sped up. Mwahaha! Because there's no way I'm letting any sane person hear my whole ramble about this horrible story I wrote. You have to slow down the video to try and hear me. Or maybe you won't. Who knows? So yeah, let's get into my reading phase. Am I a bored readerlet? Okay, let's go. Bah, whatever. And that, ladies and gentlemen, if you even managed to hear any word I said, was my full-length fanfiction I spent a year and a half on in a nutshell. Too fast for you to hear? Good, because looking back, there were a lot more fight scenes and fun lines here that I actually did enjoy making when I reread the story for the episode, but it's nothing I'm ever gonna re-upload publicly, at least not until I have a good reason to, because the overall story is clearly just remixed versions of fun game moments I was obsessed with at the time. Full Crystals from Bravely Default, World Ending from Final Fantasy VI, Battle on the Ice Tower on the Ice Cliffs from East Book 1 and 2, and the final battle being like that Yu-Gi-Oh episode where Noah stops his father from taking over the virtual world or something. Needless to say, all the story was just a bunch of these remixed game moments being retold using the cast of characters that was more or less my friend's cast than my own, especially with all the children. I do think I like the idea of Shady as a protagonist, however, because female warriors aren't really represented well in action stories in my opinion, unless it's for the wrong reasons, or just to avoid the status quo and be like, oh my god, I'm a girl who's fighting! But no, I actually did go out of my way to make Shady just an ordinary person who was capable of fighting, and a good fighter at that. But I really did go way too far in the whole end the world twice thing, along with a bad habit of two main villains being revived constantly like Nawaku from Inuyasha, only to pull the devil as the final boss out of my ass at the very end of the true villain. Needless to say, working on this off and on for a year and a half, despite how horribly short some of these chapters were, it did take a big toll on me because nobody but my good friend Josiah, who owned most of the characters in the story to begin with, read them. And I actually will have to say to him if he's listening somehow, thank you, because even though I don't like my story much looking back at it now, it was good writing experience that helped me for the future, and it was constantly being supported by a very helpful and nice friend. even as I was doing other things at the time that just made me a bit more embarrassed than AHV ever did. If you're out there somewhere, Josiah or Resident or Toontown, I hope you find this video because I thank you dearly. I started writing reviews just 2 months after the finale of AHV in 2014, so it did lead the way to what I'm doing now, so I guess I have that to thank for it. But yeah, I know I still haven't gotten to a juicy thing you want me to talk about since I teased in the Wii U episode. You've been all waiting for me to confess this before hate groups start to leak my life and try to expose me. The true reason I want to make this episode in the first place, because I want to detail all about how I got wrapped up in the dark shadow realm world of DA known as fetishes. Now before you scream and click off this video or report it to get the age rating boosted, I'm gonna instantly clarify several things to ease your mind. First, only 3 fetishes will be named, and they're so minor and really silly that they honestly can't count as anything adult or NSFW because of how silly they are. They're the tamest fetishes out there, unless you go too far with them, which I never did. That's what the original stories I made of said fetishes were meant to be to begin with, silly, dumb writing I did initially as a joke. Second, you won't see a single picture related to any fetish I talk or hint about in this video, I promise. The most you'll ever see are some of the dumb requests and RP replies I had to deal with growing up on the site, and they're lacking in any of the questionable content because they were written so horribly. Are we good to talk about this now? Now to unleash my inner demons and take me to the Shadow Realm and ruin my PR career forever because apparently some people think if you have a fetish you're a sinful person you should go to hell because yes, there are actually people who hate them and I feel bad and I never wanted to begin with. Let's go on. In August of 2012, Ancient Happiness Vanished was just barely starting. Only a couple chapters were made of it at the time, and my trusty friend Josiah was still reading each new chapter I pumped out, no matter how crappy or short they were. He still favorited each and gave me some advice along the way. I was still doing the Fanfictions.net update from time to time, but most of my attention was focused into Ancient Happiness Vanished. However, as someone who was used to at least having a small group of followers who'd give me attention and feedback for all my older stories, along with those who'd give me constructive criticism that I used to ignore completely, though now I was rolling up the feedback and actually wanted it more than ever, I was feeling upset about the lack of views my story was getting on the site. So I asked Josiah to spread the word on Ancient Happiness Vanish, and in the meantime I decided to write short, unrelated stories about whatever was hot at the moment in hopes of attracting the wider audience to my DeviantArt so that I'd have more people to read Ancient Happiness Vanish. Looking at the most popular newer stories at the time, and by popular I just really meant anything that was above the wimpy 10 views and 1 favorite I get per chapter of Ancient Happiness Vanished, I realized that a lot of them were about 2 particular silly topics I thought were simple and cute. Fat animals like cats, dogs, and Pokemon getting fat I guess from eating too much berries or food, and cartoonish and framed of the same creatures like Balloon using air pumps, magical berries, or plot armor. These stories I encountered had nothing to do with icky humans, otherwise I jumped ship right at that moment, but rather, I did see some stories that remind me of silly shows I did enjoy growing up, such as Cat Dog and several other cartoons that had several of these exact same situations in their episodes. I remember the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog having a few, even though I think that show's pretty crappy and a bad show looking back at it now. But Cat Dog in particular, geez, that show was weird, even by my current standards today. But anyways, those stories I first encountered were honestly pretty horrible and not well written at all. But to my shock, they got at least several hundred views and dozens of favorites. So while joking around to a friend one night, I figured I'd write an inflation story, but make sure all the grammar was really bad and the detail was super light on purpose, which considering the quality of AHV at the time I wouldn't even have to try to make it an accomplishment, and I'd just focus on making it as short as possible and get to the point. So, some viewers and parasites holding a dark secret of liking this stuff may be wondering, so who knew I about? Who was the first victim? And are you ready to hear who was my first ever subject to a gag fetish story? It was none other than Renamon. Just a random Renamon from Digimon Tamers. I'm sorry, I confess to committing one of the biggest sins any author or furry writing a fetish story could ever do. But I did figure out from searching at the time that Renamon was somehow really popular in not just weird inflation stories, but everything. Not just because Digimon Tamers is an epic, awesome show that you need to watch right now if you haven't already, holy frick, it's great, but because, well, I don't even honestly have a clue on why she's so popular. I guess because she's female and her design's cool and all, but as an avid fan of that show, I just cannot honestly see anyone who'd want to portray her in anything besides an action fighter role. Because if you want to use a specific one from the show for some horrible reason, I know that particular Wenamon will probably kick and destroy you without any hesitation in a heartbeat if you try doing any stupid ideas to her. Needless to say, my crappy story was shot out in just a few moments of writing, consisting of nothing more than a simple plot that consisted of random Wintermon wanders into a lab, finds an air tank explodes, and she fades like a cartoonish balloon. I uploaded my crappy story to DeviantArt and went to bed thinking nothing of it, wondering why I wasn't writing a cool story about Megidromon destroying the world instead, because Megidromon is my favorite Digimon from Digimon Tamers. Yet to my utter shock and dismay, when I woke up in the morning, it actually got a lot of views on the first night. I don't remember how exactly because of how I erased my entire DeviantArt gallery and barely cared for the story to look for specific numbers, but I do know the very same day after I uploaded, I saw it had at least double the views of my average AHV chapter. I even got some nice comments too from Inflation fans who thought it was a cute story, the reasonable reaction, and then things broke in my mind when I got my first ever message that said it was hot. Confused on why a random, poorly made, deliberately crappy story about inflating balloon Digimon would be considered hot, I decided to look up inflation as a whole on Google, only to find in my shock and horror that there were real people who enjoy it as much as the personal things that they would try doing in real life to themselves, despite how stupidly dangerous and gross that is in general. It's labeled as a fetish, and I wasn't even aware of what that word even meant. Looking up that word, I learned there was a whole bunch of these that people of all ages had deep inside. Some are completely silly and harmless, like the fattening one I mentioned earlier, and even inflation is technically harmless if you aren't brained enough to do it in real life, but some other topics completely surprised me, especially one I knew I liked and had no deeper feelings for. That particular subject was transformation, because for me, as someone who wrote stories about it on Fanfictions.net, like Love Comes Across All Dimensions, without anyone calling me out on it on writing fetish trash all the time, and as someone who had a favorite game all about transforming into another creature via the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, I was shocked and mortified that people would take it a step further and have more interesting reactions to the idea. As for myself, the first too crazy I ever got with transformation was me doing a stupid prayer I did summer before 2012, where I read that Espeon Umbreon story on Fanfiction.net I mentioned earlier, and I begged God to somehow transform me into an Umbreon so I could look cute enough for an Espeon to love me because I was a human and woe is me, I couldn't get a girlfriend. Of course, Pokemon aren't real, and Eva's transformation, thank God, but said thoughts did come about during that period while I was just looking badly at my self-image, and the explanations of some of my online friends who do hold this secret fetish, they also told me that's exactly the same mentality that got them into the deeper aspects of the transformation fetish. For them, it was just something in their brain that clicked as a silly fantasy to enjoy, nothing more, while for me it was a temporary period of my life that I thought was, oh cool, and I used it as the plot point a few times before I got tired and thought it was a boring old concept. Still, this whole new world of dark, weird fetishes that made no darn sense whatsoever was opened up to me whether I liked it or not, and while I didn't look up any of the other subject matters at the time, much less anything related to the NSFW side of them, it did make me realize that there was a big audience for those types of stories. So while I refrained from doing transformation stories on DeviantArt, I did meet some fellow friends who enjoyed the subject for the same reasons I did, or those who were even the oddballs who liked it more than normal. Soon my circle of online friends on DeviantArt expanded past the small Looney Tunes fan club into one filled with people my age who liked the same free fetishes. I wrote one more inflation story before I focused entirely on Ancient having just vanished for the rest of the month. But that one inflation story also did well, and people seemed to praise me for not doing anything with humans and rather just using whatever animal-like creature from media I felt was good enough for the story. Because keep in mind, outside of Shelia and my friend's character Jack from Ancient having just vanished, both stories I made on DeviantArt starred animal creatures, and the first starred Renamon. The second one I just made, however, I don't remember who I made the victim of inflation. I think it was Kimber the White Lion or his girlfriend Kitty from the same show. Yeah, you know, that cute character, the White Lion. That's actually a great show I want to talk about someday, but now's not the time, especially in this context. Needless to say, as I found people who enjoyed my work, I followed them back on DeviantArt and saw that there was a whole field of artwork and stories devoted to these two strange matters of getting fat and inflating animals. And while they were both stupid and silly subjects to me like transformation was and nothing beyond what would feel more personal, that would soon change the following month, as in September I got a really uncomfortable flashback while browsing the site. My dark age started when one of my new online friends had favorited a picture relating to another fetish. But this fetish that they favorited was really familiar to me, and it made me feel all strange inside for the wrong reasons. It reminded me of a very bad, scary movie I was forced to watch as a kid by my birth mother's abusive husband. I can't even name the movie even though I know it because of how much the movie scarred me for life due to the age I watched it and how graphic it was. It's not Friday the 13th or anything like that, even scarier than those movies. I was used to watching some adult stuff at a young age I shouldn't have, like Andy Larcher, The Simpsons, and 48 Hours Mystery, and Criminal Minds, but this was just a different situation. It was an R-rated movie, and not a random one that came on TV I could easily ignore with my Game Boy due to it being too much for my brain to handle at the time, like some of the random crap that appeared on TV like Final Destination and the Resident Evil movie. Not understanding any of what was going on outside of random people dying was all that I needed to not care about those R-rated horror movies. This movie, on the other hand, was a lot more graphic and had skin melting off people's bodies when they touched this creature that was evil. There was an ugly shower scene that was very graphic and I can't even think about without feeling sick, and it was just a disgusting movie I would rather never ever talk about in my entire life. Needless to say, this image I saw on DeviantArt was a really drawn picture that had the same similar concept of something devouring another something from that horrible movie, but with animals instead of people and her scary creature, and without all the scary burning flesh on the outside of the body. Instead, it's done in a cartoonish way which was really unrealistic, and I could only remember seeing twice in media before that point. Once in an episode of Cat Dog with a fish that grew too much and got revenge on the main title character for being mean to him, and once in a movie I loved as a kid called The Page Master, which was an epic animated fight scene near the end of the movie where a kid fought a dragon with a sword. In a way, the way this particular weird fetch was portrayed mostly reminded me of the stupid and silly nature of Kirby sucking in enemies to steal their abilities in the Kirby franchise, and Kirby was a game series I loved thanks to the amazing Mia, so from here on out, as I give an abridged version of this final chapter of my DeviantArt life, despite there being a lot more to talk about, I'll cover this fourth fetish, the Kirby, to keep my promise of not giving more than 3 fetish names. And if anyone tries to reveal the true identity of this fetish in the comments, don't bother. I add a filter to block it out, and I'll delete all comments mentioning it because I do not want to explain more of this side of me more than I have to for the video. It's very personal, still part of me technically, and I do not like talking about it. I prefer to stay to my normal side. Anyways, as I remember the scary details of that movie from my past, but also the silly nature of the 2 cartoons I saw with similar situations to the weird picture that my friend favorited, I decided to look up the keyword of the Kirby in the DA search engine, and decided to read a story by a Pokemon fan. This person deactivated their account years ago, and even though this will pretty much give away the subject matter I'm censoring if you Google it, I feel it's really important to mention the name to explain the full story. This person was a writer on the site known as none other than Outside the Spear. Deactivating his account mere months after I read the story, I can only remember the story he wrote that got me into this subject from my memory. But it did give me inspiration to fight my demons, and to find interest in the Kirby subject matter to be massively obsessed with it like my friends were with inflation and transformation. No worries, I'm not going to go into long detail like I did with Ancient Happiness Vanish and speed it up for you because it was a really short story. Oh no, the story that Outside the Spear wrote was about a main shell, that cool fighting type from Black and White, Pokemon Black and White, which were just about to get ready to get sequels that October. Her father was a Bishop, another cool Pokemon from those games, about to teach her how to hunt like any deer, lion, or animal with any claws that could tear prey apart in pieces. However, when he isn't looking, instead of slashing her prey to death like you'd see on Animal Planet, she did the Kirby and did something to the prey whole and alive. Thus, this was my gateway to the Shadow Realm, and while I did have a few minor flashbacks and fear of the horrible movie that exposed me to this whole mess to begin with, I decided, since I was good at writing stories at this point, and HV was my normal self's passion project, to do another, shorter set of stories entirely related around Pokemon creatures. No humans or any of the sort whatsoever, since that was my preference from what I saw, and the preference of the audience I had built from the inflation stories I made on purpose to be bad. Here, I made a small island, known as Hot Isle, filled with Pokemon that lived under the guardianship of the Island Guardian, who would help me generate them from danger as long as they stayed within the range of the island so that the Ho-Ho who lives with the Guardian can protect them from harm. My story revolved around a main child named Mina, who arrived at the mysterious island to live a nice, relaxing life after moving away from Unova, unaware that a lot of Pokemon on the island did their natural instincts, aka the Kirby, whenever they pleased, which led to Mina making a rival of a Lipod neighbor named Lila. Along with the many friends she'd meet who'd support her and help her establish life on the island, have fun, meet new friends, and all that stuff. The very first chapters of this short story, which I sent to several fans of the Kirby I had met on DA while preparing my story, was an even bigger success than my inflation stories that were made as a joke, with the short story alone getting dozens of favorites and comments, as a lot of fans of Mina was made on that day. I also got a lot of watches out of it too, and for the first time ever, I felt that I was actually getting the audience I wanted ever since I was a kid. Of course, I didn't neglect AHV for Josiah, and I continued it whenever I was able to, making sure not to shoehorn the Kirby into the story at all costs, because I wanted to keep the original intent of it being an action story. It was a dumb crossover, sure, but nothing done out of a shame or weird subject matter like the Kirby stories. Alas, these new chapters of Ancient Happiness Vanish, even with my newfound fame, still had record low view and favorite levels, which confused me at the time as I was still getting good receptions from any new stories I wrote with the Kirby as a subject matter. I even got into role-playing at the time, thanks to some fellow the Kirby writers who showed me the ropes, and told me that they were pretty much stories shared between more than one writer, with each writer's character being controlled individually by the creator. One of these friends I met, a nice lady with a Lugia character named Marigold, even gave me some basic writing tips for Ancient Happiness Vanish, which helped significantly in the later chapters, and I still thank her for it. Unfortunately, when I announced on my DeviantArt journals that I was willing to do RPs of the Kirby with anyone, I didn't expect to get flooded with a ton of requests. Nor did I expect to get addicted to doing these RPs to the point I literally pestered anyone interested in writing or drawing the Kirby to write an RP with me. It got so out of hand that when I joined another website that some of my friends were a part of, devoted to anything without humans, I made an idiot out of myself and pestered people with RP requests on my first introduction. And looking back now as someone who's still on that site despite leaving DeviantArt behind for reasons I explain later, I feel like the biggest idiot of them all, and I still apologize horribly for the immature way I was acting by asking anyone for an RP request. Even then though, I still didn't have as much of a bad obsession with the Kirby as some of the people sending me the RP request. While I made a lot of new friends through RPs that did go through and we did have fun, well-written adventures together, there was a lot of crappy parasitic people who just wanted the RP to get their rocks off on the Kirby. Since Mina was my main character at the time, and she was a female, she was unfortunately the victim of such attempts. It got even weirder when I learned that the Kirby I was used to writing had an even crazier, more disgusting side to it that's so out there I can't even hint at what it's about due to the NSFW nature of it. And people try getting me to do RPs of those aspects at the age of 14. Just know, today I still do not like most NSFW aspects of the Kirby, even though I'm now nearing the age of 20. That's how bad and disgusting they are to me. And therefore, I felt really offended that people would ask a 14-year-old to, well, do bad stuff in RP. Needless to say, ignoring the creeps and blocking the ones I needed to, I'd continue to write the occasional silly The Kirby story and gain tons of followers and favorites that I'd dreamed of. HV still barely got any attention at all though, even when I got over 100 watchers. Despite my constant reminders to my watchers in my journals to check out my normal stuff, they'd completely ignore it and be wanting the RP all the time, or just would wait for the next story with the Kirby subject matter in it. Despite said stories having nothing technically NSFW about them, I still felt somewhat dirty about writing them. So I confessed to my grandparents in the middle of November, and my counselor as well, all about the Kirby stories, thinking they were evil and a bad idea, but to my surprise, both of them agreed that there was nothing wrong about the stories I was writing, and said there was just nothing out of the ordinary for science fiction, and that a lot of people have fetishes as long as they keep them to themselves. It was just a normal, ordinary thing that brought me and a bunch of friends together. And he was right. Despite the horrible way Mina was being hit on from the annoying RP spammers I agreed to RP with anyway because I was too friendly and stupid back then, I did make legitimate, good friends who enjoy playing video games and talking about them along with our interest in the Kirby. And that's what kept me motivated to work on both AHV and those Kirby stories. My normal-sized passion for gaming even led to the best part of my DA career in my honest opinion, when I established a fan club for the newest Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game, Gates Infinity, and fans of that game joined and shared the cool artwork. I met some awesome people that way as well, without the need of a fetish or the Kirby to connect us together, so I did find my eventual home in the normal side community as well, and to this day the DeviantArt group for Gates Infinity is still up, hosted by my friend. So you can check it out if you want to. Everything was going great in 2013, thanks to the new Gates Infinity group, some RPs I made with new friends, and people enjoying Ancient Happiness vanishing, though still lower than my normal stories. I was getting used to my strange audience and even contacted some of my closest friends via Skype off and on. One of those new friends was actually a fellow YouTuber on the same site who currently has over 100k subs, but I won't name them out of respect. They know who they are if they're watching this. Anyway, said friend and I did RPs of the Kirby for a while, and we both really enjoyed the stories we wrote together since he was a fellow author of them as well. But while being his friend, I also met some friends of his, one of which was a girl I thought I could get along with well online, since I did meet a few online female friends from my DA audience as well, even though I never ever went to a romantic relationship with any of them. However, as a 15-year-old with semi-strict grandparents, I found out that said person I met liked to swear a bit too much. And nowadays, I'm totally fine with that as long as it isn't vulgar or behavior akin to that of a hate group. Back then, my grandparents freaked out that anyone would even think about saying the F word, so I was forced to silently block said girl. This angered her, understandably, but what wasn't understandable was the fact that she sent her gang of followers after me via a call-out journal, which was technically against the site's rules. Getting a bit harassed by her followers non-stop and not wanting to get involved and make the situation worse, I just simply blocked the toxic people she sent after me and moved on. Though some of my peers I had met a few months prior got mad at me for a decision that wasn't even fully mine, and friends like the aforementioned fellow YouTuber promptly left me, thinking I was a bad, sensitive person. I still never ever made a journal calling her out in response, not by name, because that would be immature, petty, and against the rules. I figured I'd give it a few months, silently unblock her, and let the dust settle and we could become neutrals again. But she just kept going on, and on, and on, and was acting a bit too toxic to the point I didn't even want to unblock her anymore, even though my grandparents had long forgotten about her. The fact that the DeviantArt mods did jack about the situation with her harassers except tell me that blocking solves everything, even though blocking caused the mess in the first place, upset me a lot more than the actual behavior of the girl. So the rise of the spam bots on the site in the following months afterwards just made my outlook on the community worse because DeviantArt clearly didn't care about its moderation team. It didn't help that as I was entering high school at that point, my peers weren't really treating me as well as they used to due to my shy nature and them being old, football jock people, and being high schoolers who wanted to be popular and all that stuff, and they didn't want to be with an Asperger's kid, so they just promptly ignored me and promptly made fun of me for the way I was, which left me with my best friend Paul's only friend I had in real life, along with a very small amount of actual online friends who were still on DeviantArt, because some of them had just plain vanished months before this petty incident with no explanation at all, including the nice owner of the Lugia that taught me writing tips, along with a few other friends. I was in a very bad spot at this point, and it didn't help that as I shifted more towards writing Ancient Happiness Vanish for my friend Josiah, who was still around thankfully, my audience still continued to ignore Ancient Happiness Vanish in my normal work, much to my dismay. By the time Pokemon X and Y came out, my pool of super close internet friends were rather small, and while I did have the few of them on my 3DS to voice chat with, I still felt like it was my fault for giving in to faulty advice from my grandparents to block someone who really didn't need to be blocked in the first place. On the other hand, said girl who was overreacting from a silent block months after it happened gave me what I felt was a warranted behavior for me keeping the block on. I will say before anyone guesses in the comments or even if said girl or YouTuber friend find this video, that in recent months, I did do the silent unblocking of her I always wanted to, because she finally learned to let go through the words of a friend I had talked to recently. Said friend I reconnected with who did forgive me after all this time, and now I'm in good standing with them, which was what led to the silent unblock. Still, late 2013 was not that time, so I even took a short break from DeviantArt altogether as a result. While I continue to work more and more on the occasional story featuring the Kirby subject matter, it still made me upset to see that AHV was barely gaining any views despite my high watch account, even when it finally ended in 2014 after my break ended. So in an act of desperation, I opened the point commissions that summer, after issuing a very stern warning via a journal that I would wipe my entire DeviantArt page if no attention was given to my normal stories and if no one bought my normal commissions. I established two types of tiers to test my viewer base. One tier was meant to be an adventure-based story you could buy for 30 points that was 1,000 to 1,500 characters long, starring any Pokemon character that the commissioner will want as long as they weren't human. This would be around 30 points or so, and basically it could be about whatever you wanted. Want a chick reader going on an adventure in a mystery dungeon to find items? Go ahead, I could write it for 30 points. I was open to any idea as long as it wasn't fetishy or not safe for work. I wanted to write more normal stuff and expand my repertoire. The second tier of stories was a 1,000 character story that would star the commission's characters and my own character doing the Kirby to them, with no NSFW content allowed, along with no humans allowed to be in any sort of role in the story. I priced this at around 80 points. Somehow, despite how hard I tried to push the cheaper option by making it a better deal for less, I got at least 5 point commissions for the higher tier, and while I did finish all but one of them, I was super bummed that no one was interested in my normal side's work. While I did finally find my successful niche with game reviewing that June on my personal forum, when there was Pokemon Battlezone, DeviantArt was still where the majority of my time was spent, so I made sure to complete the 4 stories to my commissioner's satisfactions and was still happy to make my peers happy, even if I wished there was support for my normal work. Unfortunately, at this point, I had also began to lose interest in using Mina in RPs and stories, due to how many people would give me crappy, no-effort replies such as this post or this post to clearly skip to the Kirby aspects of it, which I did not find fun to write anymore at all just to get someone happy. I wanted there to be a reason in the story for it, and I wanted an adventure aspect to go along with it as well. I slowly got out of my own habit of asking people for RPs based on their artwork and writing skills, cause I now know how exactly they felt now. I started using my other characters for RPs instead, and the Kirby stories as well, but I was slowly losing interest in it, period, to the point I even cancelled the final commission of the 5th person who bought one, but I did refund their points in full, plus add an extra few to compensate. Sadly, this person did not take my cancellation of their story well at all, and acted like an utter child over it, even more so than the person I blocked the Leah prior for minor swear words. The only difference to the prior case being that the person who threw a tantrum this time got over it much more quickly than the other person did, as he just bought a story off someone else to compensate. So I didn't feel the need to block him then, even though looking back now, said person throwing a childish tantrum over me refunding them was much more deserving of the block than my old friend who was just throwing too much. That was my final straw with the website. So in late August 2014, I punished my watches of over 100 by wiping my entire gallery and content related to the Kirby subject matter in any way, shape, or form, along with all other fetishes, with the only trace of it being remaining in my DeviantArt favorites. And yes, I'll remind you right now, if you go to my DeviantArt page, you can technically still see some of these favorites, so go at your own risk, as it is censored free from my attempts this entire video to keep things as tame as possible. Don't complain if you find what I liked, and once again, I'll still censor any comments that mention it for the time being, because I don't want to delve into this topic any more than I have to. Still, with the Kirby subject matter and all fetishes away from my page, all that remained was some crappy drawings I actually uploaded when I first joined the site, along with Ancient Happiness Vanished in its entirety. But alas, I was even more heartbroken when Josiah suddenly upped and vanished after sticking with my stories to the very end, deactivating his account, and none of my followers even giving a crap about Ancient Happiness Vanished despite all the fetch stories being erased. It just made me lose my mind.
Wanting to do for so long. To
no one who's probably watching this, it's just for me to go in the future. If someone else sees it and if I gave you permission, I trusted you, and if you somehow found some accent, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna leave this terrible website DeviantArt. It's kind of embarrassing, but I hate being treated like a slave. I hated being treated like a machine that could pump out stories every single night. I don't know, I just want a fresh dawn and site that likes all kinds of stuff I like, not just the sci-fi. So, I'm filming for my personal benefit, me deactivating my account. This is where I'm gonna end the first part because I don't want to share my password, obviously. So on September 3rd, 2014, I screen recorded this very video you're watching right now of me deactivating my DeviantArt account. It remained that way for most of the month, but right before the timer ran out and it would have been gone for good, I decided to reactivate it and update my followers via a journal edit, explaining how I felt about being nagged at all the time for RPs and flashy stuff I had no interest in, while also reactivating it for the sake of being able to look at my older notes and activity in case I wanted to reminisce on the past someday. And that today is now, thankfully. Unfortunately, out of all the people who I knew on the site, I didn't always give a heads up to where I would be in the future so they could contact me on other sites like Skype and my personal website. Only one responded after the first silent edit on the journal. The edits were made deliberately not alert my followers, as that way they'd actually have to look manually, meaning that in my mind, they were legitimately concerned about my well-being and they cared for me as a person instead of me for my fetish work. Alas, even as months went by and I stuck around a bit in an undercover account to talk with the few DA-only friends I still had, nobody from my normal page seemed fazed that I erased every bit of the fetish artwork and they didn't even care about normal artwork, so I promptly wiped absolutely everything in the journal section and the rest of my artwork, period, except for one journal that remained, explaining my absence. This was done in June of 2015, which was not long after I started Seafoam Gaming website, and shortly before I opened this very channel, marking my end on DeviantArt. So there you go, guys. That's why I joke about DeviantArt. It was an interesting experience for me. It started off really promising through the weirdest of means, only for it to fall apart for me when I realized that fame isn't always a good thing, especially if the followers just treat you like crap and they don't let you be as creative as you dream of being. I mean, supportive ones, when they are supportive, if they are small, at least at the time, I thought they didn't count. But nowadays I realize even a small number of followers is good enough than a lot of hateful followers because they can still give you advice and be your friend. I moved on to another website to experiment with the subject matter of the Kirby, and I still do it in private and not even that often anymore, since most of my work in the modern age is dedicated towards Seafoam Gaming now. Still, I made a lot of good friends in DeviantArt, and just recently, I finally managed to reconnect with one of my oldest peers, who I added on the Nintendo Switch months ago, but I could never contact because Nintendo is stupid and doesn't have a messaging system on the Nintendo Switch. I noticed that when I logged back onto my DeviantArt account for getting screens for this episode that you are watching right now, that he was actually still on the website under the new account, so I messaged him and he replied. Thanks a lot, Kane. Hopefully we can continue to be friends for many more years to come, and that you like this video and understand my side of the tale. So yeah, the Kirby subject matter has been repeated a lot, and there's a bit more to that story, but I don't feel comfortable explaining it. And I don't even feel comfortable mentioning this any more than I have to, hence my rules in the comments. Someday I'll come clean, fully 100% every single detail about it, but not now. Next time we'll just be taking a look at the early age of iOS mobile gaming that I grew up with on my iPod Touch. So I'll see you then. Bye!